The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
You know, when Marion Barry was reelected and people were upset that he'd been in jail, he said, get over it. Kevin Willard, up the road in Villanova, no longer wearing the Terrapin red, but the Villanova blue, said, move on. We'll move on when we're ready to move on, okay? Okay, we'll do that. We'll get to what he said, what his replacement Kevin Willard said yesterday in College Park, and also a good conversation between Field Yates of ESPN and Adam Peters, who's been on the job as the Commanders' general manager for a little over a year. And, it seems like it's been longer because of the massive change that has gone on in the organization. But when you step back and think, what has it been, 14 months? January of 2024 was when he was hired, and all the changes and all the good stuff that's happened in the organization since then. And that was part of the conversation that they had on Field's podcast the other day. So I'll play some of that in the next hour. But chase is on, and the chase is almost complete.
Strome coordinating Ovechkin. One time, he scores! The chase is as easy as 1, 2, 3 now.
Yeah, great line from Joe Beninati, the TV voice of the Capitals, as, it was the only goal last night for the Caps as they lost 5-1 to Carolina. And while it's important to win, Caps have clinched home ice in the Eastern Conference. They will have the number 1 seed in the East, and wins are not that important right now, but you want to be playing well going into the playoffs. You can't help but be distracted by the chase. I think that's all a part of it, and I know teammates are always looking for him, opportunities for him to score goals. So, once they get this over with, and it almost seems like a foregone conclusion that it's going to happen before the end of the season. They have, 7 games left to go, and this game on Friday night, tomorrow night, it's really intriguing because with a hat trick, and he's done this before, Alex Ovechkin will set the record with Wayne Gretzky in attendance, along with Commissioner Gary Bettman. And if it doesn't happen tomorrow night at home, they have a national TV game on Sunday at 12:30 against the Islanders in New York. And, in terms of what it would mean for the NHL, it would almost be better if he does it on the road. Now, Caps fans, I think, then want to and deserve to have the goal scored at home. I think everybody would agree with that. But, the juice that the NHL could get out of this might be better on Sunday afternoon. It's a great day to have it because it's in between the semifinals and the Final Four on Saturday night and the championship game on Monday. So they really only have to go up against baseball, and I think that would be very, very helpful for the National Hockey League for that to happen. Now, you heard the 45, for those of you old enough to remember the records, the 45 single version that Joe B gave you. This was John Walton on Caps Radio Network giving the album cut.
Well, the chant is over. You can hear it here now. And a 5-on-3. Let's see what happens as he sits on 891. It comes to Chychrun. He'll move in toward the top of the right circle. Down to Strome, back to Chychrun. Looks for Ovechkin. Looking to tee it up. Nothing there. Chychrun takes the one-timer. And off the glove of Anderson, the puck stays in the zone. 40 left in the period. Ovechkin to the high slot. As Chychrun feeds it to him, he scores! Alex Ovechkin gets goal. 892. It's on the power play. Top right corner against Frederik Andersen. Ladies and gentlemen, he is 3 goals away from the record. He has scored here in Carolina with 34.5 to go in the second period. It's 4-1, and Alex Ovechkin has 892 in the bag.
You could hear the loud cheering behind John Walton, and that was a road game. That was in Carolina. It'll be obviously much, much louder if it happens tomorrow night against Chicago at home. And if it doesn't, look for this. Look for Islander fans to sell their tickets to Caps fans who do not have to make a flight for this. This is a very drivable distance, and you could leave Sunday morning, 6:30, 7 o'clock, and get there in time for the 12:30 face-off. And it will probably feel much more like a home game for the Caps than a road game against the Islanders, if, in fact, it comes down to that, if he does not get the record tomorrow night. So a lot of fun and excitement, and Barry Svrluga is following along in the chase. He was in Carolina last night. You know, it wasn't likely that Ovechkin could score 4 goals, but you never know. You never know what happens in a game, and you got to be there to cover it. And Barry did a really good job in his column today. And one of the things he focused on is that Ovechkin is doing all of this for one team. As great as Wayne Gretzky was, he played for 4 different teams. He even had a 19-game stint with the St. Louis Blues before he finished up with the New York Rangers. Also, of course, playing with the Edmonton Oilers, where he won his Stanley Cups, and the Los Angeles Kings, and one of the worst trades and craziest trades in sports history, when the greatest player in the game was traded in his prime. But, you know, money was the difference there, and Peter Pocklington, the owner of the Oilers, didn't want to pay it, so he winds up in Los Angeles. But he is the greatest hockey player ever. He will not be the all-time goal scorer, but if you add in the assists, it's not even close. I mean, he's the greatest player who ever lived, but Ovechkin will be the greatest goal scorer. But he points out that, like Gordie Howe, Mr. Hockey, played a long, long time in Detroit, retired in his 40s, then came back and played with his 2 sons, first in Houston and then in Hartford. He played, I think his last game, he was 51 years old. Jaromir Jagr played for 9 different teams. Brett Hull for 5. Marcel Dion and Phil Esposito for 3 apiece. And Ovechkin has scored all of his goals and played 1,485 games, all in a Capitals uniform. And I didn't know this story. I know that Ted Leonsis did a very smart thing in locking him up to a long-term contract in 2008. It was before Ovechkin had played in a single playoff game. It was 10 years away from winning a Stanley Cup. But Leonsis and team president Dick Patrick and then general manager George McPhee were discussing an extension for Ovechkin, who was only 22. They agreed on the parameters of a 5-year deal. They decided they would finalize things the next day. But when Ovechkin left, Patrick gathered with his people. And this is what Leonsis told Barry. He says, Dick is notoriously cheap, but it was Dick who said, why don't we sleep on this, offer him his first 5 years and then another 7 to get to 12. That was so radical. It was a non-hockey move, but they eventually settled on 13 years. And then the next pivot point came in the summer of 2021 when the deal expired, and he negotiated a deal for 5 more years, which would guarantee that he would set the record in a Capitals uniform. So Barry looked back at great players who have done this, not just the hockey guys. Willie Mays finishing up with the New York Mets. You have, of course, Tom Brady, who had 20 years with the Patriots, but won another Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. And even like the locals, John Riggins started his career with the Jets. Art Monk, after he set the record for most receptions, played for the Jets and the Philadelphia Eagles. Even Wes Unseld, who is, in my mind, the most important player in the history of the Bullets/Wizards franchise, started his career in Baltimore before the team moved here. Sonny Jurgensen started his career in Philadelphia, finished up here. Darryl Green, of course, 20 years for Washington, all 295 games, but he does have a record with an interception in 19 straight years, but you don't really think of numbers with cornerback. Ryan Zimmerman spent his entire career with the Nationals, but he's not a Hall of Fame player. I would throw in Charlie Taylor, who spent all 13 years of his career with the Redskins and retired as the leading receiver of all time in 1977. That would be another one that I would add to the list. There's probably a few more in there, but I think it is significant that Alex Ovechkin will do this in a Capitals uniform and will go down as, at least in the modern era. I'm not going to give him Walter Johnson and Sammy Baugh, but in the modern era, he's the greatest team sport athlete in the history of Washington, D.C., modern era. And he has comported himself incredibly well. He's been a part of the city. He's been a great leader. He is somebody to be admired. And as he closes in, I think what Barry wrote there in the column today is important to recognize that all of it happened here. All right, let's get to Kevin Willard. Kevin Willard, who threw a wet blanket over what should have been a wonderful run to the Sweet 16 for the University of Maryland, kvetching before they got off the ground that he wasn't getting what he wanted and there had to be fundamental changes. And, he thought it could be worked out. But the athletic director, who hadn't quite left yet, he's on his way out the door. And so it all played out in a horrific way. And, of course, Willard left in the middle of the night like the Baltimore Colts leaving Baltimore in those Mayflower vans in 1984. And Scott Van Pelt saying in his podcast, it's one thing you want to leave. You want to do what's good for your family, what's good for your career. But you don't need to take a giant you-know-what. And he said the word on the steps of the house that you're leaving after 3 years. And that I agree with, and I think most Maryland fans would agree with that as well. Well, Kevin Willard showed up on a Zoom call with Philadelphia reporters yesterday wearing his nice new blue Villanova pullover and, of course, was asked by the media about how he handled things and was he using what he said. It was actually only 2 weeks ago today. Amazing. Just 2 weeks ago today, using what he said to get leverage with Villanova.
Was that some public posturing to really believe you could get a better situation at Maryland, or was it more to kind of cushion the landing at Villanova that you wanted these things and they weren't available to you?
No, everything I said during the press conference was because I love Maryland. I was passionate about my job. But very simply, all I want to do is try to get the best for my players and the best for the program. I'm going to do the same thing here at Villanova. My comments were just about having an opportunity to try to make Maryland the best program we could make it. I'm always going to try to make our programs better. I'm very passionate about my job. I'm passionate about my players. That's as simple as it was. I'm always going to fight for my programs. I'm going to fight for my players. And that's as simple as it was.
Yeah, but there's a better way to do it and a more mature way to do it. And throwing the program under the bus for whoever's next, and we now know who's next in another Williams, Buzz Williams, and hopefully he lives up to what Gary Williams did. We'll see. But, you don't have to air dirty laundry like that. You don't have to whine about not being able to keep your team in a hotel room for another night. If it's that important to you and you're making $3.5–4 million a year, just slap down your gold card and pay for the rooms for another night. Come on. It couldn't have been that important, just something to complain about. So, good thing for the Philadelphia media because they're not soft and they're not going to just let that go. So this news conference went on for about 20-25 minutes, and near the end of it, somebody finally asked this.
Your overall feeling about the fact that people feel you kind of left in a, not cool way, for lack of a better word.
No, I mean, I obviously, I think some of my comments during the NCAA tournament probably could have been a little bit less abrasive. But unfortunately, sometimes when my passion for my program, my passion for my players come out, I get a little excited. The only thing I'm going to say is normal fans just don't understand what went on. I had such a great team. I was so focused on my team. I was so focused on my players. Winning those those games, hitting a buzzer beater against Colorado State, being out west with my team for 12 days was such a great experience for me. We had so much fun out there. The timeline, no one knows it, no one understands it. I can't change that, and I'm not worried about that. All I'm going to say is that Maryland just got a great coach in Buzz, and I'm really happy for them. And I'm super excited to be at a great basketball conference here. And I just think it's time to everyone move on.
No. You're moving on. Not everybody here is moving on. And if you show up in College Park with your team for a scheduled game, you deserve whatever booing you're going to get. And what you did on your way out the door, you didn't have to do it that way. And it was a coaching job that was good. I got the team to the tournament twice. He built a really good team this year, and they made the Sweet 16. There are ways to handle it, and he handled just poorly. You can leave if you want. Go. But don't go in the way that you went. Now, Tom Lavera's got a really good column about this today, and after the news conference, or maybe it was even before this, there was a release put out by the school about Willard being hired, and it read this way: Coach Willard quickly stood out among an impressive pool of candidates during a comprehensive national search. This was Villanova president Reverend Peter M. Donahue. Throughout the process, he wrote, Coach Willard demonstrated that he has the vision and experience to guide Villanova's basketball team in the challenging world of college athletics. Beyond his notable success on the court, we were also impressed by his ability to articulate how Villanova fits into the overall arcing mission of the university. I should say Villanova basketball. This, Tom writes, from a man of the cloth. Too bad the tablets that Moses brought down from Mount Sinai didn't include, those shall not cover my neighbor's coach. Yeah, right. I mean, if we're to believe that they waited until Maryland was out to do this big search, you're crazy. And if you think they waited until they fired their coach to start looking, you're crazy. This is a job that clearly Willard had his eye on during the season when he knew there was going to be a change. And I really questioned the ethics of all of this. But, it is tampering. There's no question there was tampering going on. No way he could have worked out a deal, 24 hours, 48 hours after his team was eliminated in the NCAA tournament if they were starting from scratch. Come on. Mike Loxley, I think, really said something really significant while all this was going on. Remember, he was asked, Maryland was opening up spring football practice at the time the Terps basketball team was playing. And Loxley said, as I've stated since I've been here, I've gotten the resources that I have needed to build a foundation. I've learned in 33 years of coaching there are no utopias. Every family has their issues and dirty little secrets, but I'm of the opinion that those are handled individually and behind closed doors within the family ranks. Well, yeah, he got his money. Willard had his eye on Loxley's money, and Loxley goes, hey, this is the way it's divided up. Football brings in the money. Shut up and don't air your dirty laundry, which I would agree with. Here's how Tom concludes his column. Williams is expected to get the financial resources, that's Buzz Williams, the financial resources that Willard claimed he wanted here. That would seem to then become Loxley's business, but like he said, there are no utopias. And the reality of this situation, and I think it's unique among college basketball programs across the country, talking about Maryland, is that clearly basketball is number one. There was a list that was put out a couple of days ago. There are 4 programs in the country where basketball outdraws football. And you probably don't have to think very hard about 2 of them. One of them is Kansas, and the other one, of course, is Duke. And then the third one is Syracuse, which makes sense because they can get $30,000 for basketball in the Carrier Dome. And the fourth one is Maryland. And, Loxley has complained about attendance. He'd like to get better attendance. But he's got a program that probably is never going to rise above mediocrity. 8 wins in a season is probably the high water mark. Maybe a great year they win 9. But that's what they have to deal with because that's where the bulk of the money comes in. Otherwise, Maryland goes to the Big East, and the school doesn't get as much money for their athletic programs. They don't have the television money that comes in from the Big Ten Network, and they have to tell programs, that are non-revenue, like swimming, and I think they've already eliminated some of these, track, field hockey, where they've been great. Soccer even doesn't bring in money. Those things might have to go, and they don't want to do that. And a big-time school like Maryland, a big state school, should be in that Big Ten conference, should be still in the ACC, but there are financial reasons for them to leave that as well. So it is what it is. Willard got what he wanted. He goes to a school where basketball is number one, and they got a coach who, for the moment, is saying all the right things. That's Buzz Williams, and we'll get to the buzz on Buzz as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
The other day, I retweeted something from former Terrapin great Len Elmore, who wrote a letter to the fan base and his fellow Terps, guys he played with, guys who played after him, and said, let's get a coach in here who has some roots in the program, bleeds Terrapin red. This was some hours before they hired Buzz Williams away from Texas A&M. He had been the top rumored choice for couple of days, and he got the job. And, Len had put in his letter that he was tired of these mercenary coaches who played the school like fiddles, and they did. And there was a long story that was put up by CBS.com over the weekend with the Gossett family, the prominent boosters, saying they were played like a drum by Kevin Willard. And so, they didn't do that. They didn't have someone with Terrapin roots. There was a path on that. Tony Skinn, former assistant at Maryland, now the head coach at George Mason, did a good job there. We had what Dwayne Simpkins did at AU, but each of those guys had only been head coaches for 2 years in their mid-major programs. So they got what I called yesterday a Band-Aid, and Candace Buckner, in a very good column today in the Post, calls a quick fix, and that's what it is. She writes, the Terrapins rushed to get this coach, at least partially because they had to in today's college basketball landscape. But Buzz is a bridge. He's here for a good time, a guaranteed 100 wins and a tournament appearance wherever he goes, not a long time. Williams should rent a home when he shows up in the new place, as fans in Milwaukee and Blacksburg and College Station, Texas, and all around men's basketball have figured out. Surely Maryland President Darryl Pines and interim athletic director Colleen Sorum knew this as well, considering all those informative YouTube clips that they have watched on Williams, a strange yet actual point of pride that Pines mentioned during yesterday's news conference. Yeah, he did. He said he watched a lot of YouTube clips on Buzz Williams, for whatever that means. But yeah, this is something really that they had to do. They were in a time crunch. The portal's been open for over a week and a half. You got like 1,700 players in there, and it's a quick game of musical chairs. You got to get these guys situated in new programs, and you got to recruit. But Williams, who has a different style than any Maryland coach in the past, there has never been anybody like this. Lefty Driesell was not like this. Gary Williams was not like this. Mark Turgeon was not like this. And Kevin Willard, the disingenuous Kevin Willard, was never like this. But Buzz Williams, who grew up in Texas, has sort of a preachy style about him. And this was his opening statement yesterday at the news conference in College Park.
Life is often measured in time. But it's remembered in moments. And so, in a genuine way, in an humble way, I am grateful that my family has an opportunity to be a part of this moment. And I know Colleen's already introduced them, but I've spent most of my adult life studying greats like Coach, watching every press conference like this, every post-game press conference, reading every newspaper article when that was important. I've studied coaches my whole life, not ever thinking that my name would be in that mix, nor am I deserving.
So he's emotional. That's a good sign. Really does seem to be happy about having this job. Why he leaves out the H on humble, I'm not sure. He's humble, but okay. There's that. And clearly, he had studied what people were saying, including Len Elmore, about the job, that links to the past were important. They had a good showing there. Gary Williams sitting front and center with Juan Dixon, the only coach to lead Maryland to a national championship, the MVP of that championship, Juan Dixon. They were sitting there. They had a number of other former players there. I saw Lonnie Baxter. I'm not sure about that. I'm sure Gravis Vasquez. I'm sure there were a number of former players there. But right front and center were those two key people, Juan Dixon and Gary Williams, sitting side by side. And Buzz Williams made it a point to link the now to the past.
I have great care and love for all of the former players, all of the former coaches, all of the former administrators, all the former presidents, all the former ADs, all the former donors, all of those teams that I was able to be a part of. I also want to honor them because I know that that's what led to this moment for my family. And to have an ego and think that, oh, look at this, I don't think that's the type of team that represents this institution or this program in the right way. And so it's a delicate act on how to be honoring and respectful of what has been created and show respect to those teams, while at the same time, I know the teams that I have been a part of and those young men and women that have given their best to allow those teams to maybe be overachievers and win on the scoreboard in the arena, but also win on the scoreboard when there's not a scoreboard. And so all I can tell you is I understand. And all I can give to you is not the word culture that everybody says, not how are we going to play. I understand all of that. And I'm not even trying to dismiss the importance of all of that. But I think what's important is for you to know that anybody associated with the team that we'll be a part of now will give their best. And we'll give our best from early in the morning until we can't go anymore. And all of us will have an insatiable desire to figure out how to change our best. Because staying status quo, we know, is never good enough. And so we'll give our best, and we need every opportunity for our newest team to learn about the former teams.
All right, so good job on that, and made a point to talk to Gary, recognize Gary. I mean, that's part of the picture here, and Willard did a good job with that. 3 years ago, he understood that. Turgeon was in kind of a different circumstance because you never really want to be the guy that follows the guy, but he was. And to some extent, he embraced Gary, and there weren't that many players left when he took over. There's no players left now. But at that time, when Turgeon came in, there were 7 players in the program, which for most schools was low. And he made a point to say, yeah, there's 7 players here, but they're all well coached. I thought that was a good thing to say. And, Turge did a pretty good job, but he really, I don't think his personality was really a fit here. Willard's was. I'm not sure about Williams. Winning will tell everything, but we haven't seen a coach like this at Maryland. To some extent, Ed Cooley does a lot of this at Georgetown, and he's good at it. But, whether this plays well at Maryland, we'll have to see. But again, this is not really college basketball. It's as it's been in College Park for 100 years or whatever it's been. It's a new world in college basketball.
Any coach would tell you that roster construction now happens daily, not just the day of the press conference. And I don't want to make light of other press conferences on where things are at. That's what this has become. And change is going to be daily. I need to evaluate who's on the team. I need to hire a staff. But we need to be very thoughtful about who joins our team, not only for this year's team, but does it make sense for now and in the future? And does it fit what we want our program to be about? And does it fit how we want to play? And so it's transparently, the last 32 hours, I've done no recruiting. And so I would say that there's been 700 people go in the portal since that time. So I don't know the latest. And at some point, maybe today, I can get to it.
Well, hopefully he did, because they don't have a team. I mean, literally, they don't have a team. Of the top 7 players in the rotation, all of them are either out of eligibility, in the transfer portal, or headed to the NBA. So you got pretty much a clean slate. There may be a couple of walk-ons still there and guys who hardly got any playing time who may or may not stay. But you need to get a whole new team, a brand new team. We will not know the players on the court. At least we've had Julian Reese to pay attention to for the last 4 years. When they take the court at the beginning of next season, who are these guys? I don't think there has ever been. No, of course not. There's never been a season like the one that will be upcoming where you literally need to know the players with a scorecard. You can't tell who they are unless and nowadays you need their whole resume because many of them are on their third school, and if there is a high school freshman in there, that will be an oddity. Most of the players, I would imagine, are coming from other places, and we'll see how many follow him from Texas A&M. This is about, I think, the most important thing that was said yesterday. This is the number one thing. He got, apparently, what Kevin Willard was promised. They gave Kevin Willard, from everything I've read and heard, they gave Kevin Willard what he asked for. He wanted more money for himself, of course, but he also wanted more money for the program. He wanted a bigger piece of the pie from football, and they were willing to give it to him. And he also was able to use that as leverage to get what he wanted at Villanova. Well, it sounds like, at least he's saying publicly, that Buzz Williams got the Kevin Willard package.
There was never any question from them on the commitment for us, me, the staff, NIL, the players, the resources, the Gossett Center. I saw that this morning with a hard hat on. I don't know how many of those will be available in August. That's going to be the best in the country. So I'm not trying to be argumentative on anything, but I'm at peace with all of it.
Yeah, and as far as the facility, that's great, and that was really important 5 years ago. In talking to Len Elmore, it's not really important at all. He said to me, these guys will practice on asphalt if you pay them enough. And that's really what the game is now. Until they get this under control and there's supposed to be some type of a salary cap next year, here are the details that you may be able to get your head around. A court settlement that's due this month would require colleges for the first time to pay athletes billions for their play. It's set for approval next week. Many schools have said that most of the $20.5 million they'll pay out to their athletes as part of the $2.8 billion House settlement will go to football and men's basketball players. Well, Georgia already told you the breakdown. They're paying football $13.5 million. Basketball's getting about $2.5 million. They're not giving as much. The breakdown here is going to be a little bit different. Buzz Williams is going to get a bigger piece of the pie than most of the top football schools. So if that gives him a leg up, that'll be helpful. And, most Maryland fans would be thrilled with that because if Mike Locksley turns in a 7-win season, okay, that's pretty good. But Buzz Williams will be expected to take the team to the tournament and make a run to the Sweet 16 at least, and maybe further than that. This is the last thing that was covered, and that was the style of play that he plans to use.
What I think I'm supposed to say at a press conference is we want to play really fast. We want to score more points than the other team. We all want to clap and give great hugs and dap. I think what I've learned as a coach is in this ever-changing model, you have to have skill to be able to coach a lot of different ways. And I think the coaches that I've studied that are married to their style, I don't know that that's sustainable in what this model has become. And so similar to Gene's question, who's on the team, I don't know, but I know what's important from an intangible standpoint on being in our locker room and the pace at which we work and the care at which is intended for the process. We've adapted our style of play at each institution. We haven't been great, but we've been fairly consistent. And we have walked into scenarios where you are starting from ground zero and somewhat created and manufactured a way to be okay. And we always want to do better, but how we played at Texas A&M was completely different than how we played at Virginia Tech. Different league, different scheduling, the net wasn't involved, the pace, all of those things are different. But I also think that what we've done a little bit, some of the smart people on my staff the last 30 hours is I want to make a good decision on how the league, what's important in the Big Ten. We've never coached in the Big Ten. So I want to have some context on what that is. But I think the coach's job is to get the best players that fit the people you want to be around and then figure out how to put them in a position to be as successful as they can be.
No, it's 18 in the Big Ten, so it's a lot of teams to to try and figure out what you need to do against. But yeah, there's a point to be made there. If Derek Queen doesn't show up in College Park and Julian Reese is the only big man on the team, maybe the team runs differently. At least this year, Willard got some shooters in there. They couldn't hit the side of a barn the year before. And from what I heard, I was listening to someone who covers Texas A&M yesterday, and he said Buzz Williams' teams shoot poorly. They were last in the SEC in field goal percentage and also free throw shooting. So they play great defense, he said. They play hard for Buzz Williams. They win games, but it may not be the most pleasing style to watch. The big thing is they need to win games. They need to have a good team next year, and that'll calm a lot of people down about all the rough feelings left behind by Kevin Willard. Coming up in the next hour, Adam Peters on his journey in Washington, plus what others are saying about this seemingly hot take from Tim Hasselbeck that Shadeur Sanders might be Kirk Cousins. Yeah, might be Andy Dalton. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. On the surface, NFL players playing flag football in the Olympics seems ridiculous, doesn't it? I mean, you think of the Summer Olympics, you think of swimming, you think of the track and field events. I guess more recently you've come to think of it for basketball. Flag football? Well, we have breakdancing in the Olympics now. Why not? And NFL players playing flag football, that might have seemed ridiculous some time ago. But as the NFL looks to gobble up the international market, it could prove to be helpful for them. So don't rule it out. It's a ways off. It's not till the summer of 2028. But it is on the front burner now, and there are star players who are stepping up and saying, oh, yeah, I'd like to participate in that. Tony and Mike looked at it yesterday on PTI. We'll play what they had to say later in the hour. A lot of football to talk about. This is a big month. It's the draft, and it will start actually, is it 2 weeks from today? I think it's maybe 3 weeks from today. Yeah, I think it's 3 weeks. The 24th is when it gets underway. And, the format, they do the first round on Thursday night. They do rounds 2 and 3 on Friday night, and then Saturday they finish up the draft. And it's in Green Bay this year. It used to be in a hotel ballroom where Pete Rozelle would write the names of the players drafted on a chalkboard, and it would start like on a Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock. And at one point they were doing, I think, 17 rounds, maybe a bit more than that. There were fewer teams, of course, but it would go on forever. And eventually they got to the point where they said, sometimes drafted players who go in rounds 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, they make the team. But let's give them a better chance to catch on with who they want to, and we can shorten this to 7 rounds. At first it was 8 rounds, I think 93, then it went to 7 rounds, and it's been 7 rounds ever since. And the draft talk really starts almost before the football season ends. We don't even necessarily know who's going to draft number 1, but we have a pretty good idea. And, the number one thing is finding a quarterback. You got to find a quarterback, and that's what makes the story here so sweet and satisfying, is that they found a quarterback. They got one. Whereas every other team, or most other teams, not named like the Kansas City Chiefs or the Philadelphia Eagles, are looking to find that guy. And Cleveland Browns are certainly one of them. Maybe the Tennessee Titans, although they're expected to take Cam Ward number 1. And what about Shadeur Sanders? Shadeur Sanders has seemingly fallen. And this is the crazy stuff that goes on with the draft. They don't play any games or anything, and the combine numbers don't mean that much, and a lot of these top guys don't even run at the combine anymore. They just go in to get weighed and measured. But somehow the chatter continues, and you hear from people like Mel Kiper, oh, yeah, he's dropping. Like Jackson Dart, who was good, not great, seemingly, at Ole Miss. He could go ahead of Shadeur Sanders. And the thing about Shadeur is he's not his dad. He's an accurate quarterback, but he's much more of a traditional pocket quarterback and doesn't have nearly the speed that Dad had. So when you look at him, you're looking at comps which might seem mind-blowing, but as Tim Hasselbeck, who is not a hot take guy, as Tim Hasselbeck said the other day about Shadeur,
he is smart. He knows how to play the position. I think where it gets really tricky is like you're talking about rarefied air when you're talking about drafting a guy at the top of the draft. And look, he just is not as physically talented as you would like to see. I mean, it sounds crazy considering he's Deion Sanders' son, but like that's just the case. And so, look, my comp on Shadeur Sanders has kind of been in that like Andy Dalton range. People have compared him to Kirk Cousins. Look, those are compliments. Both of those guys have thrown for over 250 touchdowns through their NFL career. Both of those guys have led teams to the playoffs. But when you're talking about the top half of round one, look, again, you're looking for elite traits, and he just doesn't have those. Now, look, you're going to have to beat the market at quarterback, so you're going to have to draft a rookie quarterback at some point because of what's happened with the Deshaun Watson deal.
Wow. You're talking specifically about Cleveland there. But for some, that's mind-blowing. What do you mean? Shadeur Sanders could be Andy Dalton? He could be Kirk Cousins? Oh, gosh, the smear campaign on this kid. No, not really, says Mark Sanchez, who was on the Dan Patrick Show yesterday.
I mean, those guys have had playoff appearances. Those guys, have I believe, won their division at least once. It truly is a compliment. I don't think it should be viewed another way. Those guys can operate an offense. They can get you down the field. They get the ball to the playmakers, and they're the ultimate old school, point guard that plays defense, distributes the ball, has the high shorts, and slaps the floor when he plays defense. You know what I mean? Those are those guys, and that there's nothing wrong with that. That's just a different style, and as long as you're winning games, nobody cares. If you operate the offense well, you're scoring your 30-plus points a game. Nobody cares how you do it. It's more fun, sure, to watch the guy that runs all over the place and it looks more like a Madden football game. That's great. But that's also really hard to continue to play like that. And from an offensive coordinator's perspective, when you get up to the line of scrimmage, they got a pretty good idea of where this ball is going to go. There's nothing more frustrating for an offensive coordinator than getting up to the line of scrimmage and going, oh, God, I don't know what this guy's going to do with the ball. That's like way too much stress for a coach to go in and out of every game, every drive, like, oh boy, does he understand what we're doing here? Like, that guy's got to know, and he's got to know that you know. So I think those are compliments, and I don't mind that comp. I think Hasselbeck does a good job breaking stuff down.
Yeah, and look, Andy Dalton was a second-round pick. Kirk Cousins was a fourth-round pick. Shadeur Sanders, if he goes in the first round and he has careers like they did or has a career like those two guys, I don't think that Cleveland can look at that as a failed draft pick. Johnny Manziel, that was a failed draft pick. But I'm not sure Shadeur Sanders, if he lives up to those two guys, would be that. But that's not the way we look at things. And I guess what really is what makes the draft so much fun and why so many people are interested in it is the possibilities. The hope that if you're drafting high that you get it at Jaden Daniels, or if you hit the lottery and you're drafting in the 6th round and you take Tom Brady. And you never know. You just don't know. You think in 2000 that they were dancing and pouring champagne on their heads when they drafted Tom Brady in the 6th round? No. And he sat the bench in the entire first year of his career and was on the bench again for his second year when Drew Bledsoe got hurt, and the rest is history. So, this pre-draft speculation, oh, he can't be Andy Dalton. Oh, he can't be Kirk Cousins. Well, maybe he can be, and maybe that wouldn't be such a bad thing for the Cleveland Browns. The other day, Adam Peters, the outstanding general manager of the Commanders, was on a podcast that's hosted by Field Yates. They actually worked together at one point. Adam Peters got his start after playing football at UCLA in the NFL with the Patriots as, it's not a gopher, but they call him a slappy. That's the term for him. And it's a guy who does a lot of different things. He does some film breakdown. He picks up people at the airport and takes them to physicals and things like that. And, learns the ropes from the bottom up. And Field Yates did the same thing and was on track, I guess, to at one point be a front office guy, a general manager. But he transitioned to TV, and he's done very well. Even though he looks very young, I guess he's in his late 30s now. looks like he's still about 17 years old. But Adam Peters has some gray in his beard, and even though they're about the same age, does look significantly older. And it was on the podcast that Field hosts, and they got into the journey that has taken place in really about 14 months for Adam Peters, where he goes from assistant GM in San Francisco to GM in Washington to taking a team, building it, doing a great job in free agency and the draft, and hiring a coach, and all of that resulting in an appearance in the NFC Championship game. And here's how it all came together from January of 2024.
What was really enticing about the Commanders was the new ownership, right, with Josh Harris and his group, understanding what they were about, understanding that, they really wanted to create something new and build something here that hadn't been here before. And being able to have those resources and that support is a big deal. I really, I love this game for a long time. I love the history of this game. So, being a part of a franchise with the history that we have here and just being around for so long and having so many great players and being in our nation's capital in the NFC East, that's a big deal to me. And so being able to compete at the highest level, I think is really, really was a really big draw. And then obviously the situation, which, coming in, we had a lot of cap room. We had the second pick of the draft. We had a lot of draft picks. Those were all great, and kind of icing on the cake. But I think the first things are the ownership and the club. And so having those things together were really big draws for myself and our family.
You've alluded to this already, but I think it's worth reminding people. There's the player evaluation. There's also the person evaluation when you're looking at draft prospects. But at some point last year, I'm guessing you said to yourself, as far as the player is concerned, Jayden Daniels is the kind of guy that I'd love to have at pick number 2. Obviously, there was one team picking in front of you. You didn't know it was a certainty, but you didn't have to work through too many scenarios. Before we get to the person part of it, was it a play, a game? Was it just the continuous film evaluation of the Heisman winning season last year? Was there kind of that moment where you said to yourself, all right, this is the guy?
Yeah, I've said this before, but with the Niners, where I came from, we had Brock Purdy. So, most of my scouting during the fall, I wasn't looking hard at the top quarterbacks of the draft. Probably in retrospect, I should have, but so I didn't get a chance to see Jayden in person. But, the first time that I really started watching him like very closely was when I got here into Washington. And, it wasn't one play. It was just the first game I turned on. And I just turned on the first game of their season and they lost. It was Florida State. But the way he played in that game, some of the throws that he made, the decisions that he made, just the way he went through his reads and the way he layered some throws was like, holy cow, he is, because I had seen him at Arizona State. Brandon Ayuk talked about him a lot in San Francisco. They're best buds and always spoke about him, but I really never watched him like that and realized how good he really was. And then just from there, it just kept going and going. It was just every game you watch, you're like, oh my gosh, he is really, really good. And then, so that's the player evaluation. That was pretty easy. Like you said, I mean, I think everybody knew Caleb was going 1. So we knew pretty quickly that Jayden was going to be our guy too.
So I will say, like, for me, it was a lot of plays. Obviously, Missouri last year was maybe the game where I thought to myself, like, I think I'm done here. Like, I don't need to do too much more evaluating, only because it's like you got this defense with Missouri that ended up having like 4 guys drafted and a lot of talent. And obviously LSU struggled defensively last year. And it was like 3rd, and I don't care if it was 1 or 17, and there was just no answer for number 5. But how about the person? Because there is a person evaluation. Even if the guy's the best player you've ever seen in your entire life, if you're investing the number 2 pick and you're drafting a quarterback, it's got to be your quarterback and your CEO and the guy you can put in front of a microphone under any circumstance. You got to have a guy that the huddle is going to respond to. You got to have a guy that's going to be driven to work, all these things. How do you figure out, or when did you realize the person was also in line with the player?
Yeah, and almost, I mean, exactly in line, if not better, in terms of the person. And so it was, early on, you get all your background from the scouts. The scouts are out there all fall getting, all the information they can about Jayden or any prospect from all their sources throughout the school. There's, they talk to the pro liaison, like I referred to earlier, but they talk to the position coaches, the strength coaches, the trainer. the academic advisors, everybody. So you get all that aggregated information from your scouts. And then, being able to pick up the phone and call certain people that you have relationships with. So I called Herm Edwards. We talked to Mike Denbrock. We talked to Brian Kelly. We talked to his, private quarterback coaches out in Orange County. And the same thing kept coming up. And it wasn't a mistake how much he loved football, how competitive he was, what a great leader he was, what a great teammate he was, to a point where it was so consistent over and over and over again. It's like, all right, this is real. This is real. This is a real dude. And, he's not very outspoken, but he's a quiet, once he opens up, he is, but I don't think he's like a out front loud guy, but the way he is a real and true leader, and his work ethic and bringing other guys along at 5 a.m, having them change the codes at LSU so that you can get in the building earlier and stay later. All those things were just consistent really all over his whole college and really high school career. So we felt really, really good about the person, just as good, if not better, about Jaden the man as the ball player. And that's what made us really excited and very comfortable and very, confident that we would have a guy at number 2.
All right, so you made a decision prior to drafting Jaden that was, of significant consequence as well, which is hiring a coach. And when you got hired, obviously, that's probably the first thing you're either asked about or you have to account for. What goes into a coaching hire? I mean, I think we all know, like, hey, everybody gets the interview request, and usually takes a few weeks. Sometimes, depending on what coaches you have involved and whether their teams are still playing in the playoffs or not, it can take a little bit longer or go a little bit faster. But Dan Quinn, obviously, is the coach you end up hiring, had an unbelievable year this year. He's been to the Super Bowl as a head coach before. The credentials speak for himself. But what's the actual process like for you? What are some of the criteria that you're looking for when you're evaluating top candidates?
Yeah, doing that for the first time after I just got hired as a GM, I was like, what am I doing here? It's so
a little different than just picking players, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot more to this job than that I found out pretty quickly. One was, hiring a great leader of your football team, a great person who's also a great coach, obviously. But so, being my first time, I just really wanted to be very thorough with the process. And so we cast a wide net and had a lot of candidates that were all really good candidates. But I think one of the many things that stuck out with DQ is just his preparation, his readiness for this role. One, already having done it, but understanding not only what he did well, but really focusing on what he didn't do well and making sure those things didn't happen again. So he had an incredible presentation. Everybody. I was fortunate to be working with Kyle Shanahan for a number of reasons, but also because he coached under DQ in Atlanta, and a lot of people on our staff in San Francisco had coached with him too. So I had not really known DQ, but known of him and the type of person that he is. And he's everything you hear and more in terms of just being a great human being and a great coach. So knowing that, understanding what he's accomplished, how good he is, how much players love playing for him, how much coaches love coaching for him. And then, getting to know him through that interview process and his work ethic and his commitment to not making the same mistakes and being as great as he can and understanding what he needs to do that was extremely impressive. So, we clicked and we saw things the same way. He's got incredible leadership, incredible motivation. He connects with players really, really well. And he develops players and he develops coaches really, really well. And I think all those things make a great head coach. And so, we were thrilled to get him, and he, the way he was able to bring this team together so quickly, and we've got players from everywhere. We had very few guys that were still here that we brought back that were free agents, and then brought free agents from everywhere. And the way the team was able to get so close so quickly, that was all due to DQ and his leadership. So, really awesome been partnering with him for the last year.
That's Commanders GM Adam Peters on the Field Yates podcast. That might have been a help that they pretty much changed over the roster, because so many of those guys who had been here during the Rivera era, where it was just awful, so many different things happening, the investigations of Dan Snyder, the trainer he brought in, Ryan Vermillion, who was investigated by the DEA and eventually took a plea deal where he'll never work again as a trainer. All those things were going on in the organization. So to get a fresh start with new players, I think was helpful as well. And, of course, you keep, some of the great players around like Terry McLaurin and so forth. But a brand new start was a big part of it. And the hiring of Dan Quinn, in the rearview mirror, you go, well, yeah, kind of a no-brainer there, Look at the job that he did. But remember, they were after Ben Johnson pretty hot and heavy. I don't know if he was their first choice, but you remember the story of the ownership group on a plane, Josh Harris's plane, to go out and see him in Detroit, and they check their Twitter feed and they find out, oh, yeah, Ben Johnson has said he's not going to take the job. He's going to stay where he is in Detroit. And who knows, what he would have done with the development of Jaden Daniels. But as it worked out, you hire a defensive coach, which is not the way teams go these days. Dan Quinn, not only was he over 50 years old, because a lot of these guys are getting hired in their 30s now. I think Johnson's still in his 30s. And he was older, and he was a defensive guy. Those would be, in some cases, 2 strikes against you. But they went for him, and it may have been their second choice, but it's one of those things where you look back and would say, well, maybe Ben Johnson did them a favor because the culture that he created here, Ron Rivera used to pat himself on the back about changing the culture. No, he didn't. He didn't do it. It was changed here under Quinn, and he got out of the way for Cliff Kingsbury. And I don't think he knew. And Kingsbury is a former head coach, so there's maybe a clash of egos there, but that didn't seem to be the case. And Kingsbury seemed quite comfortable being the offensive coordinator. And Quinn was very deferential to him, gave him a lot of credit for what he was able to do, and everything worked out great. So sometimes it's the hires that you don't make are the ones that work out the best. And for this circumstance and this situation, Adam Peters turned out to pick the right guy, it looks like. It looks like a Dan Quinn, and obviously picked the right quarterback, though that kind of fell into his lap. And, I from what I understand, that they had identified as Jaden Daniels as the best quarterback in the draft. Caleb Williams, everybody said, is a generational guy, and maybe he still will be great. Maybe the two of them are going to be the next Brady and Manning combo, that they'll play each other a bunch of times in playoff games and both in the same conference, the whole thing. But for now, Jaden Daniels gets the jump, and Peters gets a lot of credit for what he did in the draft and also free agency and hiring Dan Quinn as the head coach. It's an NBA story that I meant to get to yesterday. It's an Associated Press story written by Tim Reynolds. And I know, old man complaining about three-pointers, but it has to be out of hand. Come on. I mean, the game that I grew up with, learning to play basketball, is you work for the best percentage shot. Now we see guys who are passing up layups to kick it out for threes. Player catches the ball inside the circle and steps back and throws up an off-balance three rather than getting his feet set for a good high-percentage two-pointer. No, they don't want that now. And to me, it's not good. It's not the game that I grew up loving, watching the Bullets play the Knicks in those playoff series. The great teams that came from Boston, the Celtics with Dave Cowens and the Laker teams with Jerry West and Will Chamberlain. That's gone. It's gone. It's a 3-point game, and the best team in the league shoots the most threes, as Reynolds points out in his story. Boston shot a lot of three-pointers. They have taken at least 50 threes in a game 36 times this year. They're 29-7 in those games and tried 62 of them in a win over Memphis on Monday night. To me, shooting 62 three-pointers, the three-pointer was supposed to be like a special thing. And I remember they did a documentary, kind of like following a season of St. John's. And you may have heard me say this before, but I really like this. Mike Jarvis did a great job at George Washington, got the job at St. John's, and they were having a team meeting, and he said, who here can shoot threes? And like 5 guys raised their hand. And he goes, no, you can shoot threes, and you can shoot threes. You other guys, I want to keep my car. He has that thick Boston accent. He was saying to them, I'm not going to let you shoot threes because I'm going to lose my job and won't be able to afford my car. Well, that's a totally different mindset now. That was 20 years ago. things are different now. As Reynolds points out, the Celtics are the first team in NBA history to take 63s in a game 5 times in a season. They're up to 1,344 made threes this year, now just 19 away from matching the record the Golden State Warriors set 2 years ago. And that's with the best three-point shooter ever, by the way, in Steph Curry, as you know. So that's within reach. It actually, I don't know if it happened last night, but it was within reach. They've tried 3,663 threes this season, 85 away from the record set by Houston in 2019. The NBA is on pace to smash the current records for three-pointers made and attempted in a season. The league record of 31,579 made threes was set last season, and the record is 86,535 attempted, was set in the 2021-22 season. At the current pace, 33,000 made threes is within reach, and 92,000 of them getting attempted isn't impossible either. Well, what do all these numbers mean? There are 21 players who went into play Tuesday night with between 90 and 99 made threes, so more will be hitting the 100 mark this year. A decade ago, the 2014-2015 season, there were only 57 players who made 100 three-pointers. That number has more than doubled since in 10 years. And, you know, again, it's like having a meal of ketchup. A three-pointer, to me, should be a condiment. You know, the bread and butter of the NBA should be getting the best shot. I've been watching this Boston Celtics series that Bill Simmons did on HBO. Watched the latest installment last night. And you watch those games from the 70s and the 80s with Bird and McHale and Parrish and Dennis Johnson, how the ball flowed through them. Bird was an incredible passer. They went through the 86 season when Bill Walton was miraculously healthy as the sixth man, and he was an unbelievable passer. Where is that now? I don't think it's great passing to kick it out for a guy for three. You want to get the best percentage shot, and Bird dumping it down low for McHale or Parrish, that was great basketball. It's not the same. It is what it is. The ratings are good enough. Young people like it. I understand that. But it has totally transformed the game of basketball. You could say, well, look at football. It used to be a running game, and they throw the ball. Yeah, they do. But the running game is making a comeback now. There's more running plays. And it also, even when you're throwing as much as they do, it still resembles the game of football. The idea is to get the ball down the field. In the NBA, the idea is to score, but it's hard to get your head around the idea that a bad three is better than a good two. You know, what happened to the fundamental of basketball, get the best percentage shot? And at one point, that was a Wilt Chamberlain dunk, okay? You also had some good mid-range shooters. Now, shoot as many threes as you can. The analytics tell you some of them will go in, and the ones that go in are meaningful. Yes, they are, but it's not an aesthetically pleasing game, at least to me. All right, all eyes on Alex Ovechkin tomorrow night, Capitals and Chicago, and he could set the record there, take a hat trick to do it, but the way things are going, don't rule it out. So we'll preview that a little bit more tomorrow and other things. Enjoy the rest of the day. Bram is coming up next, and I'll see you back here tomorrow at 9 a.m.